have a memory, and this memory comes from many, many, many years ago. And this is how I'm going to introduce you. So I was a young senior private in Ranger Battalion, walking the halls and hearing about, starting to understand the different elements of the unit and how they work, like the sniper section and the recce section and the blah, blah, blah. And as much as you think you know, then the next day you realize you knew nothing. But I remember at one time having this conversation about somebody, and I don't remember who I was talking to, which is the funnier part, who was mentioning, oh, there's this guy over here in this department. He's got this tattoo. And there was sort of almost like this reverence to it of like, this guy's been here a long time. He's very skilled, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cool. Because you're a kid and you're like, you want to have role models, and it's good to establish people in battalion. Only to find out that not only did we really never meet, but I met you many, many, many years later at SHOT Show, and I saw the tattoo, and I was like, that's the guy. And now I have you here to tell your story. So, Chris,
if you would.
I know, right?
Well, yeah.
Right? White dude, tattoos,
yeah,
beard. He's, right? So, that being the case, would you briefly introduce some of your military history and post-military for context today? Because there are two conversations that I've been very excited to have with you, and now that now that you have power again, we can do it.
Yeah. No, cool, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I've watched a lot of your episodes, and I'm sad that they're not bigger than they are, because it's like amazing stuff and they're fun and kind of like you mentioned before we started filming, like, the audience is kind of on a different level, and that's kind of cool, man. So great job on that. Thanks for having me on and let me waste oxygen here. So my name's Chris, and I spent, I guess, almost 16 years in the Ranger Regiment from 2000 to 2016, or late 2015, early 2016, something like that. Like a lot of old Rangers, and injury finally caught up to me, and I couldn't be operational anymore. So decided to punch out of there and spend my last remaining years in a different agency, and that job sucked. So I retired, and now I live in Savannah and do other awesome stuff. But my Ranger career specifically was, I grew up in 2nd Battalion, did a couple of years there, as a private assaulter, team leader, and then a sniper, and then went down to, at the time it was RTD. It wasn't RSTB yet. So RTD, I was a pre-ranger instructor for 2 years. And then I went to 375 and was a squad leader and the recce platoon sergeant in 375. And then I went to Regimental headquarters, and I was the master breacher for like 18 months. And then I went to 1st Ranger Battalion, and I was assault platoon sergeant and staff dork at 1st Ranger Battalion. So I hit them all. There's more now than there was back then. I used to say, like, yep, I got to scroll from every element in the regiment. Can't say that anymore, though, because they've added since then.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's helpful, and I like to have, thank you for the introduction as context, because not only have you seen, like, you've been in battalion for a while, but the point that contextually adds value to where we're at here is we're going to have a conversation about training, and then we're going to have a conversation about lethality. Now, I'm very excited to announce the first official sponsor of the Redacted Culture Cast. Obsidian Arms is one of those companies that reflects the many facets of gun culture. Not only are their firearms frequently found on competition fields like USPSA and 3-Gun, but they are a Minnesota-based, US-sourced original equipment manufacturer. Obsidian Arms makes their own punch and tool kits for the amateur and professional gunsmith out of Little Canada, Minnesota, that come with a lifetime warranty. Whether it is fine parts that require a Swiss machine, or you're in the design phase and are looking for an American machine shop that is in tune with the needs of gun culture, go check out Obsidian Arms at obsidianarms.com. Thank you, and now back to the show. How do we start? You've done snipers, recce, master breacher. What is the role of the master breacher? Can you explain to me what that does? Because I learned how to do breaching as a private and as a team leader. But I don't,
Did you ever go to the Regimental Master Breacher course?
No, I never did.
Well, I don't know what they're doing now, so this information is obviously a little dated. But the regimental breaching program, in theory, I was quality assurance, quality control for whatever was happening at the battalion level.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 times a year, each battalion got a course, and then I had a floater to come to Fort Benning and do the big course, which is 2 weeks of just getting it. I also did a bunch of R&D for explosives, requirements writing for new things, and we'll talk about how that kind of folds into lethality of like, what do you have to be able to do and why? And then it's like, okay, well, we need to be able to punch a man-sized hole in a 15-inch reinforced, 5,000 psi concrete wall to do, whatever mission. Like that's a task that we have to be able to accomplish. So it's like, I don't know, we don't really have a way to do that right now, that's reliable and repeatable. So ergo, a little bit of research and development and some money, and then we either get a material solution that does that for us, or a training solution that does that for us. And typically it's both, you know what I mean? Like we have a material solution, but unless we use it in this manner, in this technique or whatever, it's not going to give us what we want. So that's what I did as the regimental master breacher. I got to blow a lot of shit up and so.
How's your TBI? Let's not answer that.
Yeah, actually, interesting story, because I had been an NCO at that time almost, I think I was about 11-ish years in at that time. So like I kind of knew who I was. I knew myself. I knew what was like my baseline, And the first year I was in that position, I went to the operations sergeant major for the regiment, a good mentor of mine. And I flat out told him, I was like, hey boss, I think something's going on with me, because I act different. Like I'm doing stuff that like I wouldn't normally do. As a Ranger NCO, I'm having thoughts that I don't think are correct, or it's weird. So of course he was like, yeah, you need to go freaking get seen. And I did. I went through the battery of stuff. And of course they told me, they're like, yeah, you've really bopped yourself in the last, year. Like, how did you do this? And I was like, well, I'm at min safe distance for hundreds of shots, maybe even 1,000 plus in a 1 year time frame. And they're like, well, even my boss at the time, the ops sergeant major, was like, you don't really need to do that, do you? I was like, hell yeah, I do. Like, I'm the only guy out there. So if something happens during my course, and the first thing they're going to ask is like, where were you? And I'm like, oh, I was 100 yards back because I wasn't feeling good that day or whatever. Like, as well as I do, that shit won't fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I am at min safe with the guy, that's about to blow the thing up for safety reasons and efficiency reasons and training reasons and all education stuff. So they did the right thing. They immediately brought in 2 more NCOs. So there was 3 of us, so we kind of like rotate in and out and not destroy ourselves every Ranger Master Breacher course. And thankfully, I can confirm that between then and now, a lot more technology got brought to that problem set, with better helmets and some sensors and things like that, which is really good. So, but yeah, my TBI is it's definitely real.
Yeah, no, it's like some people are privy to how I've had to deal with it on my own side with VA related issues, and how it really is a tricky situation, because as a team leader, or as a team leader, you're there with your dude to make sure he does the right thing. Now that might come down to fitness. You're going to the gym with him. You're making sure he's in shape. It might mean that he's at when he's shooting at the range, you're right next to him, making sure he does everything. When you come down to, it makes a lot of sense when you're a master breacher, where your job is to take those team leaders and teach them how to blow stuff up, that you got to be there to show them how to do it. But you only have so many times before you start having what might just be more than quality of life catastrophic effects on us, and it's a wild study.
Oh yeah. Remember, so that class was 12 days or 2 weeks, but we worked through the weekend, so 12 days straight. And the flow of like what we were doing on what days, I reorganized it after running like 2 of them, because it's like, dude, after the wall day of just nothing but blowing freaking walls and walls and walls and walls, it was like, that was the day I'd come home at, like 9 o'clock at night or 7:30 at night or whatever, and just freaking, shit myself and forget my name and crash on the couch. It's like, so we got to put that kind of towards the back end of the course. I don't want to do that like day 4, because then I'm freaking shot out the whole rest of the class.
Yeah, and your family suffers too. Like that, your family suffers. Sometimes, my wife and I have had conversations where sometimes she's caught on and she's like, "You're not acting like you normally do. Have you been okay?" And of course, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm fine. I'm just frustrated about something. And she's like, "You're not making the decisions that you normally make." So as much as we like to blame it on, I want to circle back a little bit before we get to the next one and and ask one more question about running as a master breacher. Yeah. How much of that was theory crafting and how much of it was, because I'm gonna actually do the kind of gentleman and scholar thing on. It seems like half of the responsibilities of that are simply running this course, bringing other NCOs up to speed on how to do certain things like cutting charges versus shaped charges, so that they can trickle that information down into their platoons. But then you said the other part of it was you'd be presented with a problem. We need to be able to solve this issue.
Yep.
Figure out how. How did you? So you had, I imagine, what your normal work weeks were like. If you weren't teaching a course, you're solving something. And how much leeway how long was your leash on that? Were you able to go out and look at pretty substantial?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We had our, contingency plans, comp plans, and then what I did was I just took a deep dive on those comp plans and was like, okay, well, what are all the freaking tasks we have to be able to do in accordance with these comp plans? And then, of course, I was discounting. Not discounting, but I wasn't focused on like the GWAT fight. We did have a lot of skills and techniques and things that worked for that. And we were learning a lot and employing it. So I'd say that's probably like maybe 30% of my efforts was those types of problem sets. And then the other 70% were actual like comp plan problem sets. So what types of targets did we have to defeat? What kind of tools did we need to defeat them? And then what kind of training, skills, techniques, and procedures did we have to employ to get the effect we wanted, and tried to smash all that into 12 days. And then on the higher echelon, because of the knowledge and the science and things like that with explosive breaching, as the master breacher, like, you are responsible for these things, because you're, more than likely, I never put an officer through that course ever. So it's like your platoon leader does not know any of this stuff. Your company commander does not know any of this stuff. Towards the end of my tenure, I did get a 1-hour block when they fired up RASP 2, where I got a briefing block in RASP 2 to at least talk and educate, for an hour. So not a whole lot, but like, hey, this is when you get to your Ranger battalion and you're an officer leader or a senior NCO there that hasn't been through this course, here's kind of the left and right limits of your master breacher. Here's what they do. And here's just a little bit of blast physics, so that you don't arbitrarily just say no when, your master breacher is like, hey, we're going to blow a hole in this wall to get inside this structure. And because I understand it sounds scary, like, oh, we'll kill everybody inside there. And it's like, that's not the case at all, So just a little bit of education, but that responsibility level, is pretty big, because, when you're playing around with something as energetic as explosives around friendlies, and of course around not so friendlies or civilians, it's a huge responsibility level. So that's kind of what I focused on the most, and make sure that we never got caught on our back feet for con plan mission sets. So, I don't want to go into those con plans, you know what I'm talking about, but that type of breaching was infinitely more difficult than what we were finding, in Iraq and Afghanistan. That stuff wasn't super challenging.
Yeah. So I think that this is about as close as I can fly to the sun before the wings melt, but not only were you working on contemporary issues germane to the time or appropriate with where you're at, but you were also starting to look at other types of problems that you might need to solve should a different situation come to pass. All right. I think that's about as close as I can fly before we start either using overly dying trending words like near peer conflict. But I think the question then is, so you've had all these different positions. One is a sniper, one is recce, one is master breacher. How has your mindset, your approach to training developed? How do you approach training then, having come from the very structured yet sometimes cowboyish environment of Ranger Battalion to where you're at now?
Whew, that's a lot to unpack there for sure. Probably the biggest thing was to checklist it, or like turn it into a math equation. And that was like, intuitively I kind of understood that, but it took years to actually put it on paper. Like what without the damn buzzwords, like this is what we're going to do and this is why we're going to do it, because it gives us a reliable and repeatable outcome under X conditions or whatever, so you have to frame the problem first, that's step one. And then, kind of like reverse planning, like work it from the top to the bottom, identify everything, and then you train it from the bottom up, or teach it or whatever from the bottom up. So it's pretty simple stuff, I'm just a big fan of taking a very large nebulous problem set and chunking it down into its like most least common denominators, and then start knocking out those denominators like one at a time. But that's only, I kind of found in life working with, specifically Rangers, but now as a civilian with civilians and law enforcement guys, getting the problem set to a manageable level is step one. And then starting to work those problems. But again, that only really works if your end state is pretty clearly defined. You can't have an end state that's like, I want to be lethal, whatever. Like, okay, that's way too nebulous of a term to even start measuring. So we have to look at it and say, well, we need to be as specific as possible for what we want our outcomes to be, and then we can work backwards from there.
Okay, so peak GWAT 2000, let's just use 2010. The schedules are pretty regular for battalion, right? You have training cycle, deployment, training cycle, deployment. And if you have even a vague idea of where you're going to be deployed to, as a leader, that helps. I would imagine, since I only ever became a team leader, I never moved past that. That helps in many ways establish the goals, right? But or am I looking at this wrong? Because then if I'm thinking about it from the position of a civilian, you don't have a pending deployment 2 years from now, or 2 weeks from now, or 2 months from now. So approaching training without having sort of that very distinct challenge to face makes it a lot more difficult to how do you make evaluations. At least that's what.
Absolutely does.
Okay.
So, the cycle for, I don't know how many cycles in a row you did, but, peak GWAT, interesting term there, but when the jorts training cycles were going, the deployment cycles and all that kind of stuff, after you'd been through 6 or 7 of those in a row, you're like, this is like, what the fuck? But as I got older in the organization and you look at it, like, I get it now. Like, all that training cycle is, if you remember, it like starts off with like individual skills and con skills, and then the team stuff, and then, it progresses from there. What?
I'm actually this might be better for the audience, but you'll find this funny. I ended up doing 3 deployments before I did a single real training cycle.
Just because of where they landed?
Yeah, so I got into battalion right before deployment. After that deployment, I went to language school. That took most of that training cycle. After that deployment, on the second one, we extended. So I was gone for a longer period of time. After that, so I didn't have a full training cycle after that. And then we had a deployment, and then I had my third one, came back, full training cycle, Ranger school, training cycle, training cycle during our Ranger school during deployment for everybody else, came back, training cycle, deployment, out. And so while I understand it from my being able to look back and we have common language, I think a little bit of what could you illustrate what those from a very broad view, what that looks like to someone who wasn't in battalion?
Well, it was 6 months, start to finish, not counting like probably 2 weeks on the front end and back end of that for, leave and stuff. But so you lit a 6-month fuse, and by that time your crews probably got reorganized and reconsolidated. So it's not the same exact crew that you had the deployment prior, the cycle prior. So you got a bunch of new guys in there, new team leaders, new squad leaders, all that kind of stuff. But in the beginning, it's all individual skills. It's like, hey, this is how you shoot the machine gun or whatever. This is how you shoot the rifles. This is how you drive a vehicle, just individual skills enhancement type training, and then it flows into like, okay, now we're going to pull that together just a little bit and we're going to do some team stuff, which means I need to use a skill at a high level that corresponds with skills that these other guys are using at high levels, so we can get some team effects, whatever they may be. And then it rolls into like more squad stuff, and then it rolls into platoon stuff, and then it goes even into company level operations. So the scale of what's happening is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you're a rifleman, it's like, hey, I'm just doing the same, my team live fire, my task and purpose, and the things I was doing with my M4 and my nods and, aid stuff at the individual and team level kind of stayed the same for me the rest of the cycle. And it's like, yeah, shit, that's you're making your platoon effective because of the things you're doing at the team and individual level. You just don't understand that now your platoon sergeant's training on like how to fuse all that stuff together, with what the other squad's doing and what the machine guns are doing, and trying to use air and like getting it all into this, fruit bowl that tastes good. And we understood intuitively that, hey, if we do these things in this order, at the end of every cycle, you have, 12 platoons or 3 companies that are plus or minus a few degrees the same. It's a formula. It's like, hey, if we do these things, this is the outcome we get, plus or minus a few degrees based on, this platoon sergeant sucked or whatever the case is. But the outcomes are pretty controlled. And that's why those training cycles got like a little monotonous and a little boring after you've been through a bunch of them, especially as team leaders and squad leaders, because they're like, this is my 3rd cycle, pretty much do the same shit every cycle. But that's super important because what we're going after is a reliable and repeatable outcome, so basically that's all the principal stuff. So whatever you did during the training cycle that got you to that point, wherever you went on deployment and whatever specific problems you were working, you can just kind of pivot a little bit and be like, well, all the big picture type stuff that we practiced and trained and got down, it gave us skills, it gave us techniques, it gave us procedures. And we just have to modify them just a little bit for the specific issue that we're working, this specific outstation with this specific terrain. That was one of my pet peeves later on was, that everybody wanted like a fucking mouse site that looked exactly like an Afghan village. And it's like, who the fuck cares what it fucking looks like? You know what I mean? Like, you're not getting any training value out of the fact that there's Haji fucking graffiti on the sides of the walls. Like, that's not doing shit. But
You mean our goal is not immersion? You don't want to feel like you're there?
It was like, who cares, man? Like, we're gonna, this village could look like a freaking German town. It wouldn't change anything of our training outcomes. Again, I'm not trying to be a FUD, but it was like, okay, cool. It looks like an Afghan village. There's some value in that for sure. But I don't think the amount of value that, maybe the Army was trying to put on it.
Yeah, I recently had the opportunity to see a mount site that was recently modified to look like an Eastern European village.
Yeah. Well, so when I came in the Army in '99, all of our mount sites look like that.
Oh?
Yeah, no shit, right? So all the way through the mid 2000s, all the training sites, all the mount villages looked like European towns.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it's Cold War, man.
Yeah,
Like we all
Cold War.
thought we were going to be fighting in the Fulda Gap and all that stuff.
So we took buildings that looked like Cold War buildings. We painted them brown, said that they were Afghan villages, and then we painted them back to look like, yeah, funny how that works when you look at it that way. Yeah, sure, there's going to be differences in building construction, and I mean, an Afghan wall in a semi-rural village was usually about 8 to 10 inches thick of mud, and then the walls in my house are drywall. So that's it's a different dynamic there for sure.
You could definitely like the training kind of space that First Ranger Battalion has is quite authentic looking, and it's like cool. We can use this to develop some very specific and I would call minor tactics that only really apply to this very specific structure because of the way it's constructed or the fact that the walls you can climb over with ladders or whatever. They're shitty techniques because they don't fucking apply to nothing else. But it was like it's a decent tactic, and I'm a words guy, man, but big time. And that's another thing I got from the Army of being frustrated with like the verbiage that we use isn't finite enough to pick it apart and actually create value out of it. And that's one of my sticking points. I say all the time, it's like I don't teach tactics. Because most of you fuckers can't tell me what a tactic is. And, usually they're like, yeah, that's like how we do stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's the best definition you got, So, I was, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, have at it then, because you have me intrigued. I also have been interested in how we define things. That's going to be, that's one of the things that we've talked about in the past that really I've been looking forward to have this conversation with you. So if you look at the scope of, let's take the scope of a warfighter or whatever, or use your model as your choice. How do you start looking at the way that we use these words? Tactic, not as a buzzword or a marketing term anymore, but as a legitimate word.
Okay. How does probably the best kind of explanation that you'll understand is like, hey, a tactic is an optimal technique applied to a circumstance. So it's like, okay, what do I mean by that? I know that's kind of like a fucking word salad. An optimal technique to like, something is germane is like, hey, something as germane as like loading a freaking pistol. You know what I mean? Mag change. Here's my ghost pistol, ghost magazine. It's like, yep. So the optimal technique that we know from the sports shooting community is like freaking hold that thing right out here in front of your workspace. You can glance at it a little bit and can put the mag in it and go. You know what I mean? Gotcha. I don't want to get too much deeper, but it's like, yeah, that is the technique to put a friggin' magazine in a pistol. So now it's dark. Can't see the gun, what the fuck? Like this becomes kind of untenable because it's just a big fuzzy mass in front of my face. So maybe the technique applied to that circumstance is like, well, maybe if I hold it against my side, so I know you can't say hold it against my side, so this damn thing ain't moving, and then feel if it can mag right into it and come up, under nods or whatever. It's like, okay, I got the technique. What do we need to do to apply it to a specific circumstance? Specific circumstance seeing I can't freaking see the gun. So holding it out here in front of my face becomes problematic because this is moving, insert tab A into slot B becomes a little bit more difficult. So it's like, hey, we need to have reference points that will solve that. So we can create a tactic that does that. It's not the best technique, it's not the most optimal technique to load the gun, but under the circumstances, it works every time. So it's like technique, optimal way to do something. Tactic is how we can do it under different circumstances. So another good one when I lecture is, do you do any jiu-jitsu or fighting or anything like that?
Not enough to be called anything meaningful, but what's the phrase that we like to say? Good enough to be dangerous, but but mostly to myself.
Yeah. Well, how many different ways is there? You've probably seen plenty of fucking kung fu movies or whatever, but like how many different ways is there to throw another human being? like thousands, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's only one technique. And the technique is like, I have to get my center of gravity below my opponent's center of gravity. You know, I have to control their momentum somehow. And then I have to use my body as a fulcrum to lever them over, right? That's the technique. You could also say those are principles. But anyway, so when we get into, hey, if his left arm is forward, you can do this. Mm-hmm. If his right leg is forward, you can do this. Those are tactics. Those like, hey, the technique applied to a specific circumstance will give you a tactic, right?
Okay.
As opposed to just teaching somebody arbitrarily to do some sort of judo throw because their opponent is standing with their left arm out. And like, that's the way you do the throw. And it's like, no, that's just a tactic. You know.
So let me know if this is a sufficient example. Have you shot competition?
Oh yeah. I geeked out hardcore and all that when I was at 375.
All right. So a stage plan, right? If you're looking at USPSA, you've got they've got a stage built up, and people get to walk through the stage. The competitors get to, at least when I shot, and so a technique, we're going to use the pistol reload, is the best way to accomplish a certain thing, loading the gun or loading or topping off your magazine or filling it, whatever you want to use for verbiage today. But then a tactic is, you see tactics being developed in real time when a guy is saying, shoot here, move from here to here to shoot these targets, and during that move, I'm going to do a reload. They're essentially planning when they're going to do a certain thing. So it's not a tactic to reload my gun. A tactic is an action and a time. Okay.
Yeah, or said you're going to use that technique, but you're going to have to apply it to a circumstance. And that circumstance, it may be, hey, it's a good discussion that, you know, I'm sure a lot of your viewers have sports shot. And that's the old argument from the gunfighter community was like, do not fucking reload on the move. You will drop that. The risk of you dropping, you know, your fresh mag or whatever is too great. You know, I'm not saying that's the right answer, but that was the old adage. Or if I'm running from box to box and I'm saying, hey, I got to reload the gun between here and there. Like, do I want to friggin' maintain that magazine because, you know, there might be more targets. I might have to shoot those. Or it's like, fuck no, dude. I know I only need like 4 more rounds. So I'm just going to dump this magazine that is partially loaded on the fucking ground and go. That would be an appropriate tactic for that thing. Like, yeah, totally worked. You know, is that a good technique? Probably not. But it is a very viable tactic for that circumstance. So just understanding, like, if you, from an educational standpoint, is like, hey, we need to understand the techniques, just baseline. If we get that down, then we can have good discussions about how to deviate from that for a specific tactic for a specific circumstance. So again, in case, you know, you want to take notes or whatever, in my book, a tactic is just a optimal technique that's applied to a circumstance. Nice. So that'll give us like, okay, well, because if, you know, that same sports stage you're talking about, one dude friggin' does a tack reload before he leaves the box. So he's got a full gun, runs, shoots his other targets, right? His time is whatever. Shooter number 2 friggin' leaves the box, reloads en route, wins the stage, right? Who's correct? Who's right? Which one's the right tactic? Well, it's like, okay, well, the guy that won the stage used the right tactic. And then, of course, somebody else will be like, oh, so that's what we should always do. It's like, no. That's not what you should always do. He just created a tactic that met that circumstance.
So as you've observed yourself or others grow over time, where at what stage in a person, or what are some of the hallmarks that you see in an individual when they're sort of graduating from the I can do techniques phase to then they start thinking about tactics phase? Like, where you start seeing maturity and problem solving?
It's usually when they understand what needs to happen So they're like, hey, I know that the techniques that we have for this optimally look like this, but based on what I'm seeing here or understanding about this particular problem set, I don't think that's going to be optimal. If we do the optimal technique, it may not work because of the circumstance. So now we need to have a good discussion on like, how do we shift a little bit to make sure that we're going to be successful, instead of just the rote, like, this is how I do it, or this is the way we do it. It's like, okay, man, let's talk about this.
Yeah. Because I remember there being a short period of time in battalion where we seemed to go back and forth between two very dogmatic approaches. One of them being CQB, strong wall everything, and then no, we points of domination everything. And these are, and in reality, a strong wall is just it's just points of domination with someone who hasn't finished the second loop. Because you're gonna start strong wall, and then you're gonna have to send someone down to go clear around the couch. We know what houses and buildings look like, so they're really kind of both the same thing. But then there is some variation depending on warehouses.
Yeah, there's an extra step in there. So then it's like, well, why are we taking that extra step?
But what I guess what was odd is that I remember as I grew older and I was recollecting on such things, I've wondered why there was such a dogmatic approach to one or the other, where what we were really needed to do is be able to do both and make decisions on the ground when we were going to do one or the other.
So my personal experience, or I should say my professional experience in the problem set you just described, because I see it still to this day on a lot of different topics, but CQB is a big one, is when someone doesn't holistically understand the problem set, they can't define success measurably, or in a measure that like makes some sort of sense. That leads to the dogma, because if you don't want to have a discussion or you want to counter an argument that you're just not ready to have, then that's where jumping to dogma really helps. It's like, how about you shut the fuck up and go to your point of domination? You know what I mean? End of discussion. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, wait, but why am I can do everything in this room from this point. So why am I arbitrarily going over there? It's like, shut the fuck up. That's where the dog, because the ability to deep dive the problem set and say, well, like, what are we trying to accomplish? What's our measurement of success for this? And let that drive, where we need to be and why we need to be there type of look is a pretty deep dive on a problem set. So if, a 19-year-old team leader is not ready to have that conversation, then ergo dogma.
Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. Where you get, you see, I think I've seen this a little bit on the civilians, more on the civilian side of training, particularly because there isn't any rank structure that negates the problem, but this is the perpetual what if question. Yeah. And so you're like, okay, so you're talking about your teaching, this is how you enter in a corner fed room, and you bury your corner or whatever, and someone goes, well, what if what if a dude is here? That can be either respectful or disrespectful. And yeah. And the disrespectful or the where this becomes a problem is like, you're answering a good question, but you're not currently at a skill level and a knowledge level enough to understand that part of the question. So I've done a very few like open enrollment CQB courses, but even with my closed enrollment stuff, that's why the first day of the class is an 8-hour lecture because we have to get through all that stuff. Now, I've seen a lot of, CQB classes that it's like, training day 1, safety brief. Let me check out your gear. All right, we're going through the threshold. And like, so I totally understand people are like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what, I don't really, it's not, I haven't put the whole picture together in my head. I haven't put the whole problem set together. So you're offering me solutions to a problem I don't really understand and I can't define success for. And I understand why. People typically don't want to pay money to like spend an entire day doing a lecture on the problem set to make sure they fully understand like what the problem is, what success means,
what do we need to do to be successful in solving this problem? And then that drives everything you're about to learn. So, first we have to put it in a very clearly defined box, and then we can move the fuck out and draw fire and everybody gets some value out of it. But when you haven't clearly defined those parameters, then yeah, we see what we currently see, in the CQB world kind of came off the tracks. And that's, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know.
Well, I think we return to CQB because it's something that we've done a bunch of, but I think it also is a good tool for demonstrating all these different issues. I mean, it is a bit of a common language, I think, amongst certain folks, but it also is one of those places where you really can tell, you really do get to see how well a person's teaching capabilities and skill level demonstrate. Because when you're doing a squad live fire or like something like that, unless the guy is right behind you, your RO or your instructor's right behind you, watching you bound and move and all, they're not going to know whether or not you got to that piece of cover with a topped off gun. They're just going to know there's not enough bullets. You need to shoot more bullets.
Yeah.
And you don't have enough, you have not achieved a level of fire necessary to achieve battlefield supremacy in the situation. What is it? What's the word what's the term that we used to use when it like firepower superiority or whatever? Fire superiority. Yeah,
you've achieved suppression, let the situation develop, all those buzzwords.
Yeah. They're not terrible. They just need a little context. So
exactly. They need a lot of context to be, I think super effective. So I've been on a 15-year journey now trying to take all these bundled terms and just de-chunk them, like spread them all apart into manageable bits of information so that we can paint the picture correctly and move out. And with CQB, specifically since we're talking about that one, the first step in the military decision-making process is define the problem. And actually, that is the hardest part. Like after you legitimately define the problem, everything else after that's easy. But like, since we're on the CQB topic, the definition of the problem is where we have to start. What actually is the issue, and then we then have to define success, because for most people, success in CQB means they don't get shot, and either consciously or subconsciously, that's how they're defining success. You know what I mean? And if that's your definition of success, there's only one tactic that guarantees that every single time. And that tactic is don't go in there. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really give you a whole lot to work with. So if you define the problem differently and you define success differently, then we can kind of curve everybody's like mental reference point of the things we are going to do and why we are going to do them like that. If that makes sense.
Very much so. No, it makes quite a bit of sense to me, and I'm actually quite encouraged by hearing you talk about this. I think when we look at it, I think it can be applied to multiple different things. I mean, if you look at the gun culture as the whole, right? Let's just use a caricaturistic phrase or caricatured conflict within the United States. Gun control, gun rights kind of thing, right? We're in election season, someone's going to talk about it. So you have this issue of, well, what are the defined terms of success? For some people, it's the abolition of the NFA. For some people, it's the prohibition of the ownership of an AR-15. For some people, it's a very interesting problem, because when you look at the solutions, it's a criticism that's leveled very oftentimes at the solutions that are presented by those who are, let's say, in favor of gun control, are not solutions that are tailored towards the problem they're using to market it.
Yep.
They're going to say there's rising gun crime in the United States, so we need to stop people from owning AR-15s, while the majority of that crime is being done by a Glock 19 with that
illegally obtained pistols.
illegally obtained pistols, or there's a gun crime in the United States, and we need to prevent people from owning short-barreled rifles because the majority of crimes, the violence that's actually being done is with short-barreled shotguns. And it's like, okay, you're selling your product, you're selling your gun control product with a sense of urgency on how bad it is over here, and your solution is actually to do something completely different over here.
Yep.
So that's just an example of like not defining the problem is setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely.
Okay. I like it.
No,
like
that's and because the way the Army teaches these things, it's just like step 1 through I think 11 for the decision-making process. And number 1 is like define the problem. And then it's like, okay. And then 2, and it's like, whoa. There's like this entire scientific field of study of like how to actually define a problem.
Sure.
That's the hardest part,
And I can understand it, like a young team leader being like, "Shut up, dork! I don't need some lieutenant to try to write a white paper on why I need to be able to do these things." I can understand where that frustration comes from, but I think we've also gravely undersold the mental and technical capabilities of the NCO.
Agreed.
Are we like, I guess here's the question then. Are you seeing or do you remember a great deficiency in that step 1 being properly accomplished?
Oh, yeah, quite a bit.
Okay.
So, something as simple as, I think by the time you were doing your thing at 375, concepts like post-assault were already up and running, right?
Yes.
So all that magic that had to happen post-assault, no big deal. But I was there when we were kind of painting by numbers, trying to figure that out. And it was like, hey, what do we do? When? Why do we do it? How do we do it to get the hell off this target? When they used to give us like an arbitrary time hack, like you have 1 hour or whatever. And I get why, to kind of stress some systems. So in that kind of situation, it was like, hey, you're taking too long. So they define the problem. We're taking too long on target. And it's like, that's not the problem. Okay, that's the end state of the problems we're having. The problem is not all of us can communicate effectively because only squad leaders have radios. So the problem is we don't have enough freaking radios to communicate effectively. That's giving us an end state of we're taking too damn long, or whatever. So it's like defining the actual problem was a little bit deeper than just saying, you guys need to hurry the fuck up. You're taking too long. It's like, nope, we got to peel this onion back a couple, 4 or 5 or 6 layers to actually ascertain like what the real problem is. Why are we taking too long? Well, because it takes 40 freaking seconds for an SSE team leader to communicate effectively with his squad leader, because he has to physically walk over there and find him, and he might be 2 buildings over, and then that info has to get reported and whatever. You get it. Like the chain, the flash to bang time on the critical elements of post assault was taken too damn long because we had a equipment deficiency.
Yep.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see it as this is how we solve the problem. We need to be able to get out of here faster, but that's not the goal. The goal, that's not the goal. The issue is that if we remain on target for too long, we get counter ambushed or we get something bad happens.
Yeah. We all turn into pumpkins when the sun comes up. So
pretty much. Well, yeah, I'm scared of the light. No, Sergeant, I didn't put batteries in my EOTech because we never use it.
And it was the for CQB is like too many dudes are getting shot. It's like, okay, well, is to define the problem. We're taking too many casualties. Like, okay, now we need to go back and start picking this apart as to like, well, what are we trying to accomplish and why? And like, what's the actual problem? It's like, well, the actual problem is we're using hostage rescue tactics when there's no fucking hostages in there. So that's the actual problem. That's why we're taking too many casualties, but it was like, okay. So I've been geeking out on that train of thought for probably way too long.
Okay.
But all of the things that I do now in this world all starts with like, well, what do you want to accomplish? Like, what is your mission? What's your end state? You know, because I get to like the term mission is also super fucking bastardized and it's like a buzzword, but it's like, what do you want your end state to be? And then we can, so that's kind of like define the problem, you know what I mean? And then we can peel that onion back like 6 or 7 layers. And then we can also go forward with it. Like, okay, well, if you reach that, like, what's that going to mean? Like, what is that going to do for you or whatever the case is? And we just plan it backwards and train it upwards. So we make sure that we're not kind of, you know, wasting our time, effort, money. You know, there's a little bit of an exploratory process, I think, for everybody. But if we can minimize that from the ground up, then we're going to have way better effects, you know, way more efficient outcomes.
When you're looking at different types of, I'm going to refer to them as clients because I think it's appropriate for the material, even though it helps kind of illustrate how you would look at someone and someone would look at themselves. So let's take 3 types of clients. You've got alma mater, Ranger Battalion, trying to solve a certain problem. They're looking at a training cycle. They want to bring whatever. So they've got one way of looking at it. And their problem is let's just use again, small unit tactics. So they've got an end state that they're looking for. They have the end state that they're looking for, which would be very different than, say, a police officer, which would also be very different than, say, a non-military police employed individual living in, well, now would be like Appalachia, because that's where all the goofy is going on. How have you, I'm trying to figure out how to answer this question because it's right there. I'm framing it as I'm going. Is how often do you find yourself almost consulting somebody to understand how they're going to look at the problem? Like we're going to take a chief of police or a police officer who's responsible for training in a small town of 10,000 people. That person knows that they need to get training. They know that they have a vague idea of what that training might look like, and they know that they have the money to pay for the class. But they don't really know how to define what it looks like what winning or what doing, what.
Yeah, what this path, like what are the stepping stones we got to hit and why? Yeah,
because they might intuitively be able to understand or intuitively be able to tell the difference between an officer making a clean entry into a room and an officer kind of stutter stepping and not having his weapon up and not clearing his corner. Like when you look at 2 people do and enter through a doorway, you can tell a lot about how experienced they are just by how cleanly they enter through the building. Are they scraping their pouches up against the door? Are they entering in and then are they stepping into the doorway and raising their rifle? Or are they coming in with it up and ready and they're not touching anything? You can kind of intuitively, even if you can't describe it. But I imagine you've encountered more than a few people who have been in that position with the purse strings and the direction, but no, with the purse strings and a vague idea that the training needs to get done, but they're not sure how to approach it.
Yeah, they you know, it's a big basket term, but it's very similar to like when you were a Ranger team leader and you probably, you know, went to your squad leader and you're like, this fucking gun sucks or whatever. And he's like, you know, you gotta give me more than that, dude. Get the hell out of my office, you know? So those people are like, yeah, we need help. Like, okay, what do you need help with? What do you think's going on there? And the answer is almost unequivocally the same for, it doesn't matter who you are, what you're trying to do with a firearm. We'll just kind of stick to that as a baseline. And I would submit that the more time you spend doing optimal, like just doing techniques work, you know, manipulations and marksmanship and techniques driven stuff, don't get off the reservation, right? Everybody wants to show up to a fight house and do a freaking flying roundhouse spinning kick, you know, like day one. And it's like, hey, that's a very specific tactic. All right. But what we're actually going to do is teach you how to stand. You know, we're going to teach you how to use your body in this manner to give an effect that we want for like how to throw a punch or whatever. But it's all stair-stepped. And today with like Instagram and all that stuff, like everybody wants to buy an AR-15 and nods and show up. Like the amount of people I've had at night vision classes that look like a freaking, you know, operator that have never even been to an AR operator's like skills course is insane. You know what I mean? And I get it. That's adult American males. You know what I mean? But
where are these people and why are they not buying my stuff? I have not found this mythical man. I have met maybe 2 of them in my life where they had all the things and they looked all the way, but they couldn't do any of it. I've met maybe 2 of them in my life.
I've met a lot of them. And they're great people. You know what I mean? It's not a gig on them. And it doesn't take much of a good, like, heart-to-heart conversation of like, hey man, you're not going to get any value out of this. You know, if you do, you know, any skill or any road that you want to go down, you're going to have to start at the bottom. And even though you think you're like, well, what am I learning, you know, by doing these freaking mag changes in this manner? Because that's not how you do it. Or I got told that'll get you killed in a gunfight or whatever. It's like, hey, this is just the techniques. Once we have these, once you're boringly proficient at all this stuff, we can start deviating it. And we can start basically taking the bottom of the pyramid and necking it down to a little closer to specifically what you want to do and why, or where you need to be and why. And then we can neck it down and we can neck it down and we can neck it down. But the base of the pyramid has got to be built, and it has to be built correctly. And I think, just my observation over the last 25 years of being involved in this, what the GWAT did was turned a lot of I would say like basic rifles, pistol stuff, bottom of the barrel techniques and CQB stuff too, and everything else. And what we did was we created a bunch of these little tactics and smashed them all together and said, well, now this is the fundamentals, or this is how you do this. And it's like, no, dude, like you skipped over a bunch of stuff there to immediately get to like gas it up and burn it down on A zones. And you never really freaking learned how to do, X, Y, and Z very proficiently. So, and those issues rise to the surface pretty quick when you start doing other things. Like I see those issues rise very quickly to the top in doing CQB stuff, because all of the things you talked about of like how you can kind of point out people that are just basically very, very uncomfortable in their environment, because the best AAR comments I've ever had from civilians, attending some CQB classes were, hey, I really thought I knew how to like use this tool because I'm a big time sport shooter. I've done all these things. Like and they were right. Like there's nothing I could teach them about like shooting a gun. But when it came to apply the tool in circumstance, everything fell apart. You know what I mean? And it was like, okay, so no big deal. The bottom of your pyramid is built, right? Now we just have to neck it down to like start applying some of those things to this specific circumstance, and you'll be good. You know what I mean? But it does me no good to teach somebody how to use a gun in that circumstance. Like that's kind of untenable. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Like the first day of your jiu-jitsu career is not going to be, sparring, because it's valueless. Like we're just going to have to teach you a bunch of techniques. This is how and I want you to repeat those techniques until you're bored with them, and then maybe we have a chance of seeing you actually employ that technique in a circumstance, i.e. a real fight, a sparring session, and you actually look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah. I think it's well, not interesting. I think it's a unique problem in the civilian side to approach. How am I trying to think of this? I remember when you saw a lot of these courses of like level 1, level 2, level 3, and you'd see almost kind of like a black belt, blue belt, orange belt system or whatever for different types of teaching or coursework. So I'm going to go to a shooting course. It's a rifle level 2. And you ask anybody, you take any 10 instructors that have a rifle 1 and a rifle 2, they're probably going to have, they're all going to have a very different line between, and so it's almost, if I think we might, do you think we would just end up wasting our time and ruining it if we tried to create some form of standardization? Because I just don't think that would work.
Oh, absolutely. Because the backstory on what you're seeing today, and this is just my observation of it. The original group of men that started this entire concept of like going around the nation and teaching classes, that was the very, very late 90s, very early 2000s. They were literally the first ones that ever did it. They all had something in common, and what they had in common was they were all validated gunfighters over and over and over. They were retired from that job, or sometimes two retirements, because they're retired military, and then they did a full career as a cop or whatever. And they're old, they're broken, and they're like, I can't do this shit anymore. So I'm going to teach it, and I'm going to teach it in this manner from my context, because it needs to be done right. Because none of us got this shit in our freaking training stuff. It's stuff I wish I would have had, when I was learning this shit or whatever. And they did it well. They did it great. But the important thing was that everybody kind of understand, was like, none of them needed the money. they were all, it wasn't about that. You know what I mean? My mentor in that game once told me, I was teaching a class with him, and I said, hey, how many students we got for this class? And he looked at me and he was like, we don't have students, we have responsibilities. And like, yep, got it. I'm with you, brother. And it wasn't until the mid 2000s, I think, from what I saw, because I stayed, I've been kind of in this industry, if you want to call it, since 97. Even before I joined the Army, I worked at a big training facility. So I kind of saw these guys in classes and shit. But the open enrollment stuff, mid 2000s is when I started noticing the first crop of dudes that were like, wait a minute, I could do this as a job, like that model of like going around and teaching classes. And, you can for sure, but now you don't have responsibilities, you have customers. So it's a very minor shift, but I think it's a big shift. You know what I mean? Where it's like, hey, now I have to like do some things to get customers, whatever those things may be. And then a lot of those things were good things, don't get me wrong. But some of those things may not be good things, like, starting a bunch of clout chasing drama or whatever, or arguing about stupid fucking techniques and tactics or whatever the case is. I've just seen that shift of like, hey, teaching, this curriculum or these things that, it can absolutely be a job, but it needs to be treated carefully.
All right. Around 2000. So I left Ranger Battalion in 2013.
Okay.
And I was teaching for a short spell for another company that's no longer here in the same capacity. It's changed, as things do. But yep. I think it was, I was originally looking at it as like, that was me, who I was at that time, observing certain things, but also transitioning from being in the military to being out of the military. So yeah. Another way of rephrasing this is that you described something that I thought was only myself. I thought only I was, not only I as in like, I'm separating myself from everybody else and putting myself on a pedestal. I was writing it off as, oh no, that was just a phase for me. I was figuring out something that I didn't understand. But now you just said, no, actually that time frame was when you saw a shift from students as responsibilities to students as customers. And I remember that time frame well enough to say, yeah, I mean, what was the norm was to dig down on your competition, the other instructors, and it was.
I don't want to make it sound evil, but when you have a business, you have to figure out how to separate yourself from your competitors. So that's a business thing. If you don't do that, your outlook on business probably ain't going to be that great. So I understand that part of it, but
yeah, and I guess I'll put my thought on it is, I've met instructors and people in similar types of positions who are 100% think like, you know, twisty mustache businessman. Like they don't give a hell about the product. They don't care about you. They're just entertain them, kick them out the door. You know, these students, they usually hate their own students, whatever. These kind of people that I've met come in, burn out, and go away. They're just clout chasing. They're just there to be the cool dude. And as soon as the next new guy comes in that's cooler than you, they're gone with the wind. And so I've met people. I've interacted. I've seen people like that who come in. They get famous real quickly. They get all this attention on them, and then they're the current thing, and everyone wants to go train with such and such. And then, you know, after about 2 to 3 weeks, or maybe a year or two, they're gone. They've completely left the industry entirely. They're off doing something else now because they were the it thing for a while, and then they went on to do then when they were no longer the new guy, the new girl, whatever, then they left.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The vast majority of people that I've interacted with, though, and maybe this is a sample size of one and an issue, is that they genuinely do care about their students. They just sometimes they don't know how to. They don't know how to do it better. And so that it's kind of like I'd rather have a private that whose head was in the right place than a private who had the best PT score. Because I could take the one with the mindset and I can make him good at PT. But the guy who's a self-absorbed narcissist, doesn't matter. There's nothing I can do for him. Just
yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just you know, when you're talking guns and like all the things you can do with a gun and all the different ways you can measure it and all the different, you know, like I get it, the tree branches massively, right? Mm-hmm. But when you're trying to, you know, teach something and you're like, this is the way we do it, and of course, because the tree branch is so big, you're going to get a lot of people. They're like, you're fucking full of shit. That, you know, that's going to lose you a match, or that's going to get you killed in the streets, or whatever. It's like, okay. So then the goal becomes, hey, like I don't teach a whole lot of like weapon skills classes because they drive me fucking crazy. But when I do, it's like, hey, here's my background, here's my experience, here's my philosophical thoughts on this problem set. So all of the techniques and procedures and things I'm going to show you today are all in line with that, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, nothing you're going to learn on this range today is going to make you a world champion 3-gun shooter. You know what I mean? But just put it in a good box, or give it enough context to keep the freaking peanut gallery at bay, you know, or when the peanut gallery wants to pipe up, it's like, yeah, you're totally right. However, that's not at all what we're talking about here. You know what I mean? And sometimes, as with everything, I'm sure the context gets lost in, you know, whatever skills development stuff we're doing. So like all the time when I do stand in front of people and we're kind of pontificating about this topic, it's like we all know Mario Andretti can drive a freaking car pretty good, you know, but I also know that my mother has driven a car her whole life and has never been in a traffic accident. You know what I mean? So who did it right? You know, and if you wanted to have that argument, you couldn't. It's completely subjective because they don't pass, don't cross. You know what I mean? But I'm sure there's probably some car racer out there that like drives his car with 2 feet when he's going to the grocery store because that's the right way to do it. You know, when you're racing on a track, it's like, I get it. But, you know, specific application context is absolutely critical when we start going down skills roads. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, being able to ascertain. Yeah, we've been kind of talking around this subject for a while about how you like it unfortunately falls into one of those adages or that is like mission dictates training, mission dictates gear. You know, it's like goal define what you, well, and then you can get into philosophy too. Like you are defined by what you aim at. You are essentially a man is defined in many ways by what he aims at. that what a man worships is what he aspires to. And so there's a certain element there. I kind of want to go out. I want to dig in a little bit deeper into that though, and look at things. I want to look at the word that we're supposed to title this one on lethality. So
yeah, we kind of screwed that one up, didn't we?
no, I actually think we've just essentially paved a long road to getting to this point, which is hopefully going to be effective and productive for the audience. But the Army likes to use words, just like the marketing industry or the gun industry the firearms industry likes to use words, just like the gun culture likes to use words, that they sometimes lose the plot on what that means. And so we've talked about tactics earlier, and you might say that the word tactic was used so much that it became useless. It didn't mean anything anymore because anything could be tactically. But now that we've solved one problem, what lethality seems to be an issue that's rather specific to the military, but also maybe I'm just full of shit. So
yeah, it's I've been fighting that term for a while now because it does get thrown out so much, and it is a fantastic marketing term because it is so nebulous. So you can make that mean whatever you want it to mean, without being super descriptive,
Okay. Yeah.
And that's like all good marketing terms are that way.
Yep. It catches attention without conveying anything genuine. Who are you fighting on this?
About a year ago now, I finished about an 18-month project with the U.S. Army, and was having great conversations and got to kind of get back into that world. And I'm talking conventional Army here, like their lethality programs and things like that. But very peripherally with like the next gen weapon system and things like that. And so, that term just kept coming up. And it was like, hey, like, what the hell do you think that means? Like, and everybody kind of laughed about it because the Army, the no shit doctrinal Army definition of lethality is the capacity to destroy or cause death. That's it. And it's like, okay, my fucking Honda Civic has a shitload of that capacity and ability if I, ram it into a crowd full of people. So it's like this term doesn't mean anything, right? Mm-hmm. And the danger, though, of throwing it out there is when you kind of apply that as your end state. So it's like, hey, if I give, we'll just use like the next gen weapon system as a case study. And it's like, why do you want that? Because we're going to be more lethal. Like what? Like what? Yeah, exactly. Right. And it doesn't really give you anywhere to go unless you can really pick that statement apart and define the problem and, all that kind of shit. But it's easy to be like, we're going to be more lethal. And it's very similar to like, I'm not a musician. I don't know shit about how to play a guitar. Right. So, but if you gave me a guitar, would you make me more musical? You know what I mean? Or lethality. So I'd have more musicality if you gave me a guitar. And it's like, fuck no, I won't. Like that has nothing to do with it, or very little to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be a guitarist without a guitar.
Yeah, fair.
But, you can't. No, but like, it's not the guitar that makes the player. Yep. Right. Unless this is like, the devil went down to Georgia or something. Like there's some weird joke in that. Okay, that makes sense. So the issue with the use of the word lethality is it's just being used as a buzzword to suggest that the product is the thing. And I suppose if you wanted to, like, well, the amount of money spent on the next gen weapon system is going to be more lethal than the last one because the X amount of people lost jobs and committed suicide after that. Oops. My short window in the military did not produce an accurate understanding of how the big machine functions. So when you tell me that there's a program for the lethality, I'm thinking like, is there a program manager? Is there somebody who's been given a task? Where's the budget coming from? How does this?
Hundreds of them. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because like, so you could encounter someone out in the world who's an officer, like, oh, I'm a lieutenant I'm an infantry officer in the army, and you're like, cool, what do you do? I'm with the lethality program. I'm like, great, what do you do? Like, these are some questions, and particularly lethality is a difficult problem because look at where we're at in the timeline. We're not engaging in ground warfare maneuver fighting. We're dealing with counterinsurgency, and we're dealing with, there's many, you and I went on many missions where lethality didn't happen because we were able to submit the target.
Yeah, we specifically used tactics, that gave us a different outcome. Yeah, sure. We didn't just like shoot everybody. But the train comes off the tracks when we just start talking about technical data specifications, right? So it's like, hey, if rifle A shoots more accurate, holds more bullets than rifle B, ergo rifle A is more lethal, or if we give those to soldiers, our lethality will increase. And it's like, yeah, I think you're missing the fucking boat here. Not completely, but a big picture. Because what I would submit, as opposed to, causes death and destruction, or whatever the Army freaking term is, or definition is, if we get mental capacity, like mindset stuff, tied directly to physical capacity, and then we tie that to use of tools, guns being one of them, but only one, but use of tools and the ability to task transition between all three of those domains, the end state would maybe be something you could term lethality, So like a good case study, or probably a bad term, but a decent snippet of that was, I watched a video the other day that was on like the U.S. Army's Instagram page. And it was a soldier doing a knockout a bunker drill, and it was the guy that runs up there to throw the grenade into the apex of the bunker. I'm sure you've done that before. And it was absolutely atrocious. The IMTing was terrible. He gets up there, his rifle's not slung, so he puts his rifle in the friggin' dirt and then rolls like 8 feet to the right to the apex of the bunker. Takes him 30 seconds to get a grenade out, and then pull the pin on it, puts it in there, and then rolls all the way over. And then he's waving his hand because he doesn't have a radio, So it's like, hey, the rifle's probably great. The grenade was great. The uniform was great. But you couldn't tie them all together to actually get an outcome that was worth shit. Because the ability to transition between the skills and tools and things that you have when you need it, I could probably, after a couple more beers and thinking about this, get on a whiteboard and kind of formulate that out to where you would make the term lethality actually be measurable, you know what I mean, and mean something.
Okay.
If you tie all that stuff together and you don't look like a monkey fucking a football, and you can do it repeatedly under different circumstances, then like, okay, now we're approaching something that I would define as like lethality. Like, you've proven that you can use all these tools, hard skills and soft skills and hardware and software interchangeably to get us an outcome, that looks pretty good.
So some of the ambiguity of lethality seems, some of it is some of the let me rephrase it. It appears as if some of the ambiguity around the term lethality has a culprit behind it. It's sort of laziness, or it's,
I would agree.
Right. And now there also might be a little bit of a subjective scale, like, the she's a 10 kind of thing. Like, not everyone's 10 is the same thing, right? Is it a deployment 10? Is it a stateside 10? Is it a Korean 10? Is it, you get my joke, right? Yep. So there's it seems like, on the other hand, there is a level of kind of not necessarily subjectivity to what lethality might look like, but it's germane to the search. It's appropriate to the situation. And then the third thing that I've picked up on it is it's also a term that you seem to be approaching holistically, as in, you can't just it's not just like a stat on a thing, a data point. So you can't just look at, soldier A can carry 100 bullets, soldier B can carry 200 bullets because he's got more muscle mass. Therefore, soldier B is inherently more lethal. It's like, well, all other things being equal, yes.
Yes. Yeah. But we need to account for a few more variables.
Okay. So then what are some of those variables that you've looked at? And since you were working on a program for the military in trying to define that, where were you seeing, what were some lessons learned or valuable takeaways that anyone picking up a firearm can gain from?
It's a good question. So I think probably to answer that the best, I'll have to go to the whiteboard.
Okay.
We'll talk a little bit about I've labeled it, termed it a critical task taxonomy. And,
okay.
I think you went to college, right?
Once.
Twice.
Twice.
I have 9 credits to my name. So, but I watch a lot of like TED Talks and shit. And taxonomy is like, I think it's a biology term, right? It's like canis, phylus, whatever, kingdom, species, all that stuff. It's basically how they take something very, very big and nebulous and neck it all the way down to its most base component. That's taxonomy. So trying to apply that concept to like this entire problem set, me and a couple other guys have been working on it continuously for a long time and just kind of playing with it. And now it's to the point where I actually do lecture it and use it, and haven't had a whole lot of holes shot in it, although I'm sure there's room for improvement. But so at the very top of critical task taxonomy is this, like, what the hell is your mission? So what would be, I'm asking you, your viewers, like, what would be the best like mission to put up there, just as an example?
So there's 2 of them that you're going to get to work from. One of them is going to be let's take a father who has a job, a 9 to 5, something like that, but it's probably going to be a little unorthodox. They still go to church every day or every Sunday. They have a family. Their city that they live in is becoming more and more unsafe. There are violent crimes that range from gas station robberies to.
Yep. I gotcha.
You know what I mean? So the issue with that is that person's end goal is to, I believe that their mission would be to maintain a state of readiness that does not venture into paranoia nor complacence. They're kind of riding between 2 lines. Another example of that, though, we could also do something like what's going on in Appalachia right now. We know that there's something going on. We don't know what is going on. The reports that are being presented are not very accurate, or they're very, very conflicting. And there are people who have skill sets that want to offer aid to those in need, but they don't know how to approach it. So I don't know if you can look at either of those as an example.
I certainly can. It's definitely not case studies I normally lecture on. On the civilian side, though, like your option A, interesting, because I do go to a fair amount of like CCW type classes. And there's some people out there that just do a banger job of teaching that. In fact, I carried a gun for a long, long time, and the first real like high quality, civilian gun problem set class I went to was like, holy shit, I never really understood the problem set here. I knew I could just be a gunfighter with a pistol, but there's so much more to this than I realized. And of course, usually the mission, they're like, yeah, my mission is to get home at night or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, that's an easy fix. Don't leave. So that can't be the mission. Like it has to be a little bit more specific or deeper than that.
Can you, if you're looking for a specific one, is being able to effectively defend against a carjacking without being able to say you can't drive, because people are, is that too specific, or what another?
No, it's fine. We can run this. So what I wanted to do, because what I thought you were going to say was, something Rangerish, and that's kind of what I teach it to. I don't want to catch myself short and try to run this algorithm on a problem set I haven't really broke down yet, which is most of the civilian stuff, because I don't play in those worlds.
Sure.
But on the mill side of the house, it's like, okay, we need to friggin' conduct ambush, or we need to we need to friggin' conduct HVI rate, nighttime HVI rate or whatever. It's like, okay, cool.
I'll pause you here real quick, though. And I have noticed some of it, a little bit, me asking this question publicly, is that I think there's a much greater interest in training, particularly things like battle drills and decision making in the civilian sector. So
totally makes sense, and I know why. Like, so the trends in our industry have followed well behind, probably 10 years behind the trends in the fitness industry.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is like, hey, the fitness industry started out as bodybuilding and like jogging, right? And then a lot of people did that for a long time. And then a certain group of those people were like, how do we measure this? If you're not freaking going to bodybuilding competitions, how do you like measure this? And that really played into like CrossFit performance. Like, let's have CrossFit games. Like, let's, now we can measure this stuff a little better. And then of course, a lot of people were like, but you're not doing anything with it. Like, you don't play a sport, like what do you actually do with all this amazingness that you're getting out of, doing these things? And that breeds all sort of philosophical conversations about like, well, actually doing it is the value of doing it. You know what I mean? Even if you don't play football or soccer or whatever, but you're badass CrossFitter, that's totally okay. You know what I mean? You don't have to do it for a reason. And the shooting community for a long time, I kind of observed it go through those same things. It was like, hey, we need to do a lot of manipulations. We need to be very comfortable with these firearms under lots of different circumstances and things like that. And it's like, yeah, but what do we do with it now that we have it? And it's like, okay. And then now that the advent of like every instructor having their own graded, drills and exercises and patches and coins, and that's all cool. It's all great. It's like, hey, we're gonna push some performance. Now we can measure it. And now we have a lot of people that went down that road, thankfully so. And they're getting into, they've either made the leap to actual like sanctioned sport shooting, or they just crushed everybody's like Instagram standards, and that's not a bad thing. I just mean the stuff that they post out for, my carbine, standards, whatever. They've collected all those patches and they're like, okay, like now what do I do? So, and I think a couple of people in, business minded people are like, well, hell, like, do you want to patrol through the woods, or whatever, like do something with these skills or learn different skills to start adding on to them, so it's pretty natural. And it's not a bad thing. I don't think so, but kind of on that same vein, if we're going to do like, all right, like
mission is ambush. Got it.
Yeah, sure. Like it's ambush, right? That's what we have to, and defining success as 100% enemy casualties or whatever the case is, who cares? But very shortly under that is like, okay, like what capabilities do we have to do that? You know what I mean? And all the capabilities that you're going to list off here or think about have to be looked at from an environment domain or an equipment domain. Because, so for example, if we're doing an ambush, what's probably the like best capability we're going to need is this. Can you see that? Anyway,
I only get portion of it.
I didn't realize the.
Turn to the other way. There we go. Land navigation. There we go.
Right? Like we can't do an ambush unless we can land nav. Like we have to have that capability, right? And it's like, and so equipment wise, what are we going to have? Like we got to have a compass, we got to have these things. So we look at like capabilities we need, and then what equipment we have to have, and then what environment we're going to do it in. It's like, are we doing this in fucking Alaska in January, or are we going to do this in Colombia in June? So you start using this formula to like start parsing this stuff out, right? We're going to, anything, we're going to have commo capability. Like we're going to have to talk to each other, we're going to have to have night vision capability because it might be dark when we're doing it. You know what I mean? So you start listing off these capabilities. Have to have the ability to carry 120 pounds worth of equipment, X number of kilometers. So it's like, we need big bags. So if you do this right, you start knocking off equipment issues real quick. and you start knocking off, skill set issues, because as we get further down the list here. So this, by the way, for something as arbitrary as like, HVI rate or something, this top line gets very, very long. Like, something is like, hey, we need, we're going to drive to target. So it's like, okay, well, we have to have freaking armored vehicle capabilities. You know what I mean? Things like that. We're going to have airborne capability, it gets very, very long, very quick. But it needs to be so that you can pick it apart, and actually get the value of the big five out of it. So once we get past, we feel like this list is long enough to like kind of, if we do all of these things, basically, if we have all of these capabilities that we list out here, and we understand how to use them in concert, we will accomplish our mission. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yep. Because what you're doing is you're building your pyramid again, because except for instead of just a foundation, what you're trying to do is find all your little tasks that need to get done, and then put them in an order that they will be accomplished. Whether it is
definitely do them in order, but it just make sure you've accounted for all of them. Like we're good capabilities. We're going to need a medical capability. Why? Mm-hmm. In case one of our own dudes takes one. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, we need a medical capability in case
you're in a gunfight. Done.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but it's like, once we get all these capabilities lined out, and then we can tie them together, then we can accomplish this mission. But we can't accomplish this mission if one of these capabilities is missing, or our chances of accomplishing it go way down considerably, So once we get done on that line, we can go one step down, is like, okay, we got capabilities. Cool. Those don't come out of thin air, right? Next step down is like procedures. Like, what procedures do we need to actually have these capabilities? So probably a good one is like, a good capability I didn't put up here is planning, because that's actually a capability. What are your planning, procedures? What are your medical procedures? And what I mean there with procedures is like, hey, if we, guy takes a gunshot, what's the procedure? Like, we get fire superiority, we get them behind cover, we do initial triage, the TCCC skills and techniques I'll talk about next, those start coming into play. Eventually that gets communicated to whoever needs to know it, so they can call higher, whatever the case is. Like, that's a procedure. It goes from here, starts here, ends here, everything in between gets done right, we're good. That's a damn procedure. So we wrote it up here as a capability we need, and it's like, hey, and now we have to have a procedure for it, like to actually employ it when it needs to be, where it needs to be. Probably a better definition of that is like, procedures are just techniques applied in sequence to get an outcome. All right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see how you're continuing. You're like continuing to break it down more and more and more.
Exactly. So once we get all these procedures lined out, we're like, all right, well, what techniques do we need here? So it's just common stuff. It's like, hey, here's a decent technique, right? Load a rifle. Pretty simple. You're like, well, what technique are we going to use to load a rifle, and why? Because that would be based on like your environment. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Things like that. It's like, hey, we need to be able to 100% reliably and repeatedly load a rifle during hours of limited visibility. Mm-hmm. How do we do that? Like, can't press check it because I can't see it. So what technique are we going to use to do that? Like, what technique are we going to use to employ to put the friggin' claymore in, or whatever the case is? Like, those are just techniques. Again, they could change, because I'm glad we already had that discussion, because that is the reason that does not say tactics. It's like, nope.
Got it.
What is the techniques we're going to use that gives us these? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like TCCC stuff. Those are all just techniques, right? Like how to use the tourniquet. Cool. if we're going to have a medical capability and medical procedures, we got to have a technique of like, how do we put the tourniquet on? How do we put a chest seal on? How do we pack a wound? Right? Those are just techniques. You know what I mean? Because you've probably seen 3 different methodologies to pack a wound, right?
Yeah,
So
it's like there are so many different places where I've seen that variation where it's like the easiest one or the first one that comes to mind is like low ready versus high ready.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
you've got to be able to do both. Why? Because have you ever seen a couch? You know, it's like, because you can't low ready behind a couch. You can high ready behind a couch. I guess I don't know how. Why is this even a conversation? Come on, move on.
Exactly right. And keep that in your hip pocket. Once we understand this, load a rifle, friggin' apply a tourniquet, whatever, fill a radio, you know, all because if we want some sort of commo capability, we got to understand how to fill radios. So we got to have a technique to do it, you know. And eventually you get all the way down here to like skills. All right, what individual skills do we have to have? So some of these will be the same, like putting a tourniquet on is a skill. Loading a gun is a skill. Shooting the damn gun. And what I mean by shooting the gun is just arbitrarily, you know, your hit factor, your time accuracy, all the stuff you do on a flat range. Like, it's just a skill. Okay, cool. I got that skill. What am I going to do with it? And why am I going to do it like that? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Those questions can only be answered if you've already ran the rest of this list, if that makes sense. It's like, hey, because we're trying to accomplish this, the skills I'm going to teach you to load a rifle and put a tourniquet on and pack a rucksack and do these things, those individual skills, all of them in a perfect world, all of those individual skills will directly tie into a technique. And I mean directly tie to a technique. Basically, it's like, hey, that's the first part of a technique that you're going to learn, but that's just the skill. You know what I mean? So something as simple as like load and make ready with the rifle. It's a skill. And if you do it in that manner, we're going to tie that right into this technique I'm about to show you, you know, for how to load and make ready and pull security on this corner or whatever the case is. And then these techniques right here, once we tie a couple of them together, we get procedures. So if you're doing techniques on buddy aid, like me and you were working on a casualty, right? I'm using my skills, you're using your skills. We're using a technique that you got shown of like, you know, one guy does this and the other guy does that, yada, yada, yada. Well, once we tie those together and we're working together, we have a casualty procedure, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, those tie directly to these tie directly to these. If we string a couple of these together, we get a capability. If we tie all the capabilities together, we accomplish the mission. You know what I mean? And that's how to like take this big, you know, how do we do a raid? You know, it's like, holy shit, man.
We're going to be here for a hot minute, but
yeah. But how we do a raid or how we do an ambush, if I run my algorithm here, eventually I'm going to get to, why the fuck am I teaching you to load and make ready on a machine gun using that technique? Because the rest of the formula we already have worked out. So it's like, you're going to have to do this at night. You're going to have to do it with cold weather gloves on. You're going to have to do it, you know, with nods on, whatever. So ergo, I don't have to waste a bunch of your training time teaching you to like run some crazy drill with a machine gun, because it is fucking valueless. You know what I mean? It's not gonna tie into a technique. It's not gonna tie into a procedure. So it's kind of not worth doing.
That makes sense. Okay, so here's a problem. Here's a problem then. And I want to attack this. I want to come at this from a couple different angles. One, and I've got 2 major notes. One of them is a big philosophy question. When you're looking at this taxonomy, a trend that I see is that, like, we use words like tactics and lethality as kind of a marketing buzzword to try to essentially create a sense of urgency or legitimize an argument. Do you think how often do you think the instructor is treated as if it is their responsibility to define the mission, and they're selected based on how well they can do so?
I don't know.
I know it's not a good
bad thing. You know, I'm glad that because of market forces, it seems to me anyway that a lot of the instructors that at least I like keep my tabs on, because I'm friends with a bunch of them, I see them around, and I follow their social media and stuff, have themselves kind of worked into like a niche. They're like, hey, if you want, intermediate distance LVPO carbine, that's your guy, because he does some pistol classes or whatever too, but that's like his thing. You know what I mean? So for whatever effing reason you think you want those specific skills and techniques, go for it. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
In the civilian community, what makes it difficult, not difficult, but makes the tree branch pretty wide, is because most of everything we see out there that's available for civilians is all just this, and this. You know what I mean? That's it. It's like, here's shooting skills. Here's a bunch of techniques that you guys can fucking argue about over, like, you know what I mean? And the reason you're arguing about them is because the rest of this, like, i.e. what the hell you're going to do with it, is super nebulous. You know what I mean?
Or taboo, right? Yeah. Or
taboo. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I don't mean to be casual about it, but like if I met some people at the range and we got to know each other, the one dude's like, hey, check out my hit list. I'd be like, we're not friends, Like, oh yeah, I've got my target package built up. I'm going to go. You're like, that's a Fed. So, I can see.
In Savannah, because we just had a natural disaster. Not nearly as bad as what happened in North Carolina. Helen came through here. We were out of power for like 6 days. You know what I mean? So if that is your, like, you have to be a little bit more specific. It's like, all right, natural disaster. Gotcha. No power, no fuel. You know what I mean? All that stuff, like, for 30 days. That's specific enough to be like, okay, we can work with that. All right. No power, no fuel, 30 days, no support. You know what I mean? And depending on where you live, you're going to, in the capabilities, because again, one's equipment and one's environment. So like our environment here is like, okay, it's freaking the middle of summer. You know what I mean? It's hot, whatever. I've accounted for that. Equipment wise, what capability do I need? Like, okay, I'm gonna have to see at night, because there will be no power. So if I had the ability to see at night, that would be pretty freaking awesome. So ergo, I need night vision. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I certainly do. I'm taking a moment to laugh, because we were supposed to record this episode last week.
Yeah,
and I remember getting a text message from you explaining some of the damage that had gone on, and you were like, "Oh, can we schedule for a little bit later? There's a hurricane that hit, and blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "This is the most Ranger thing ever." He's about to be going and pulling freaking patrol base operations in his own neighborhood, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna miss the show." Yeah. Like, it's so fun. Sorry, dude. I had to.
Yeah, for me, last week was I'm filling out this list myself to like be better next time. But it's like, hey, I need the capability to like clear trees. Cool.
Chainsaw.
What equipment? I gotta have a chainsaw. I gotta have fuel. I need the capability to freaking power my cell phones or whatever. It's like, okay, so I at least need a generator and an extension cord. And the ability to like actually use them. I need the ability to see at night. I need whatever capabilities you think you're I need shelter. That's okay. The house, but maybe if I was super smart, I'd be like, I'm going to have a freaking tent or something in case we get a flood. So if we do have to displace, I have shelter. You know what I mean? That's a capability that I want. So cool. And then procedures is like, okay, well, first time, we get news that the storm is coming, fucking go around and PCI everything, before it hits. But that's just a procedure. It's like, go PCI all your stuff that you have on your list here to make sure it's freaking good. What's the expiration dates on my food, all that kind of shit. Like, do that the second the news breaks that it's coming. If you and your family had that, it's like a checklist. It's like, no, that's the freaking procedure, is that. Boom. And then it's like, hey, change all the batteries in your freaking nods and lasers or whatever. Those are just procedures that you run. And then which techniques, here, this is, different techniques to run a chainsaw, different techniques to run rifles, different techniques to purify water. What if that's sorry, I didn't put that up there. That would be a capability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Water purification is a capability. Like,
yeah,
what fucking procedures are you going to use to purify water? It's like, well, I got a Berkey and I'm going to go fill it up in the lake and whatever. But this is just a formula to like take a big problem set and then break it all the way down to individual skills.
Gotcha.
And then know that all these skills that you're doing down here absolutely 100% are going to give you some value because they tie directly to these, that it just goes up the list, right? So if I was preparing for a natural disaster, but for some like fucking weird reason, I wanted an individual skill to like, I don't know, do computer programming. It's like that's not going to help me. That's an absolute waste of my time. If this is what I'm shooting for, everything down here needs to be like programmed to get me to this point in the most efficient way. So, I need to actually learn how to use a chainsaw without cutting off my fucking support side leg. Like that's skill is run a chainsaw. Techniques is how you run a chainsaw, efficiently and safely. So
yeah, no, these things make sense. So I got one more part of that question. The first one, that I was presenting was how I think some of the gun culture, maybe this might be more of a confession than anything else, of like oftentimes seeing instructors as the ones who are also sort of saying this is what the mission is. An example, and it's a very, very repeatable kind of, once you see it, you kind of figure it out, type of Instagram personality. They've got a training company, they've got a podcast, or they've got a show or something, and they're doing all these different things, and they're using the show to create the sense of urgency. The urgency sells the product. The product is the range or the class or something like that.
Yeah, that's all cool.
And I'm intentionally not putting moral criticism on that. I'm trying to, kind of looking at this as a system. So that's one thought. The other question I had for you is actually a little bit more training specific. And this, I'm glad that I get to ask you this one because of our similar background. And I need to make sure you can translate this effectively outside of the screen. And that is, when I look at the way that people approach training, and I've regularly or oftentimes encounter somebody who says, you don't need to do that. You don't need to learn how to do blank. You don't need to learn how to knock out a bunker or clear a trench, or you don't need to learn how to, and this is the one that I think of probably the most specifically is, the easiest example is, well, you don't need to learn, you don't really need to be like headshot lethal in a sub-second door entry with a rifle. Like that's the likelihood of you being involved in a hostage rescue situation is extremely low. Very, 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 very small. And then usually there's some attachment to that where it's like, rather you should spend your time learning how to do a reload or a this or a this or this or this or that.
Yeah.
And so the argument, and sometimes I wonder if the argument is just phrased poorly, but then the other side is, well, yes, like if in all of the real world CQB that I've done, I have encountered a total of 0 bona fide hostage rescue situations. That is my explanation. However, if I have the mental faculty and the capability of being able to train up to that standard, and I choose not to do it, the one time that I am in a hostage rescue situation is not the time that I want to be figuring out how to do a hostage rescue situation. You see where I'm going with this?
Oh yeah, no. The shortest phrase I've used to kind of sum those questions up or those philosophical discussions is like, hey, no capability is inherently disabling. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's like, no big deal. And the philosophy part is really interesting because I think it's a better discussion to have now than ever before in history. and I get into this sometimes with some of my customers and clients, because of these things and CCTV cameras and things like that. We have more digital data on, you know, the reality of gunfights than we've ever had. Because now understand, man, in the late 90s and prior to that, I just say that because that's kind of when I got into this. But if you go back to the 50s, all the way up to the basically about 2010 timeframe, most of the techniques and procedures for, you know, gunfighting stuff was somewhat anecdotal, because, you know, this one time, this one thing happened, so I did this, and ergo, that's now my tactic or my technique or whatever. Didn't have a reference for everybody to look at and start picking wave tops. You know what I mean? But in the last 20 years, holy shit, we have a fuckload because of cameras and videos and all the videos from the GWAD and all the videos from body camera footage and all the videos from surveillance videos, and, you know, people holding their phone up like World Star and all that kind of shit, you know. And I've watched a lot of it, you know, in an attempt to just start seeing some trends, start seeing some highlights, like what does it mean? You know, data is a dangerous thing because you can have the same set of data shown to two people and they draw wildly different conclusions. You know, I'm sure you've run into that before.
Yeah, it's actually there's a philosophy actually addresses that problem.
Yeah.
And I mean it, like, philosophy is there's the difference between access to information and the evaluation of information.
100%. So this is just me talking, but some of the wave tops I've noticed is that, like, man, we have a lot of video evidence of people with zero professional training winning gunfights on the rec. You know what I mean? Cool. So what do you take from that? You could branch the road left and say, I guess we really don't need to, like, train that hard. You know what I mean? Like, this soccer mom just blew away a mugger, like, no problem. She had never done that before. She bought a gun, put it in her purse. It sat there for 10 years. She pulled it out when she needed it. It worked just fine. Like, what the fuck are we doing? You could probably look at that data set and come to that conclusion. I'm going to take the other branch of the road and say, well, if we're going to do it, let's, like, shoot for the stars, you know, like, let's do it the best, most effective way we can, because why not? You know what I mean? And I see this played out in real time quite a bit. And unfortunately, I see it played out because if, you know, I get some professionals that all do, you know, a shooting stage type practice thing, or maybe a CQB room, you know, and guy A is, you know, a SWAT cop or a ranger that's been doing this, you know, professionally for 10 years. And then guy B is functional with a firearm, you know, got a good head on him, absolutely can produce results. And it's like, I see no difference between you guys, none. So what the fuck have you know, guy A, what have you been doing for 20 years or 10 years? Because I'm not seeing a big difference from guy B, who just started this 6 months ago, put some effort into it, and he's functional. So philosophically speaking, it's like, well, I can tell you what happened is that guy A just does the whatever the agency prescribed frickin' practice and training is, which is, like, way down here. And they're like, yeah, it's good enough, you know? And it's like, if you're going to spend the time, money, effort to actually do this stuff, then fucking take it high, because a lot of untrained people are producing the same results of trained people. And when I say trained, I'm talking agency or department or military trained. So they got their, you know, annual qualification or whatever the fuck, and they call that good. It's like, if you're going to spend time doing it, then frickin' do it to the max. You know, nothing's going to hold you back, except yourself. You know, maybe some money issues, because this is an equipment intensive environment we're in, you know what I mean, with guns and optics and gear and all that kind of shit.
Yeah, I think we've all encountered I don't know. It's like, I think we've grown up when I say we, I'm referring to a lot of the gun culture. I think we've grown up a little bit, I hope so, away from this sort of rote tribalism of, well, he's a ranger, therefore he's good at something. It's like, well, okay, you know, I hate to break it to you, but we're, you know, not all of us are superheroes. But my point on that one is kind of trying to take it a step back and say, well, I don't, let's not even take it like I think I've certainly met cops, police officers, and military characters where the minimum possible standard is their maximum possible effort. And that sounds very too technical. They're bare minimum dudes, you know, just bare minimum. Like
that's all they need to be. You know,
they're effectively they're lazy, and that's fine. Maybe we could get in. Maybe we'd have to schedule another talk to even try to enter down another road, which is trying to make evaluations on balancing. Right? We've all met the guy who's a PT stud, tactics genius, shooting all-star. His family life is in shambles. Like, then what for? If you're gonna win the war for nothing, then what for?
Oh, so. I'm with you. You know, and the interesting thing, because I've fought those same arguments when I was in regiment, right? Because I've worked with a lot of people there that were fucking amazing. You know. And could give two shits about like gunfighting stuff. Like, yep, bullets go in the bottom, come out the front. It ain't that fucking hard. Like, I don't know why you guys put so much like you try to complicate this way over what it should be. We've never had a problem with this. Like, we don't need to spend all this hours on it. It's just not that difficult. Like, what mission have we ever failed because our marksmanship wasn't good enough? None. We never even came close. So I've had these discussions with like company commanders and shit. Like, Sergeant Sizelove, you don't need a freaking 80 hours on a flat range with your platoon. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, let me walk you through this, sir. You know, like, and it's the same argument could be had with anybody. It's like, hey, if I'm Johnny Homeowner, statistically speaking, and by you know, the data and evidence that we have, even with zero formal training, I'm probably going to be fine with my gun. You know, but okay, like, if that's the tack you want to take, then take it. If it's not the tack you want to take, then freaking train and practice and put effort into this to the highest degree you possibly can, because why not? You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at with it now. Going back to your marksmanship thing, like I'm a 3-inch circle guy. That's it. So it's like you get a 3-inch circle. It's in or it's out. And of course, a lot of my customers and clients are like, dude, that's like pretty egregious. I mean, holy shit. You want me to hit a 3-inch circle while moving from across the room or whatever? And it's like, well, I sure as shit want you to put your effort into that. Absolutely. Like, that's why we're not, my wife, who's never had any formal training, can freaking stitch a 20x40 target with an M4 pattern rifle from 7 feet across the room and do the same thing you just did with 10 years of training, because your training sucks. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the horrible time for interruption. No, we've seen people. Sorry, I'm recollecting thought.
We can edit this part out. This will wind up on the cutting room floor. It's cool.
No, it'll be fine. It's actually probably going to stay in because it makes sense. We've all seen people who are not willing to train to a higher standard. I think the weird question then is, how often times do you encounter people who just don't know which way to go?
Oh, a lot. And my answer for that is easy: is don't overthink it. Just go a way. Not an issue. Like, there will be no negative repercussions if you freaking spend the next 2 years deep diving how to become a USPSA champion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then
no.
two years later, 2 years into that, you're like, you know what? I went to this other thing. It was a, you know, tactical class, and I fucking loved it. And now I want to do that. The 2 years you spent being a USPSA GM will be super fucking valuable when you go do that. So no big deal. Same thing with a couple, maybe not a lot, but quite a few civilians that have gotten into guns very shortly thereafter want to get into fighting. You know, it's kind of natural. They're like, hey, or they're fighters first, and then they want to get into the gun stuff. You know, it's all. And I've been asked before, hey, I've been thinking about joining a fight gym, and I can't decide which style should I do fucking jujitsu, or should I do this, or should I do that? And it's like, bro, it doesn't matter. Pick one. You're going to get a huge value out of it, no matter what. Now, don't overthink it. You know what I mean? And it is unfortunate, or just a reality of the situation. If you are Johnny homeowner, you know, which is kind of my not derogatory term for just normal earth people, you know what I mean? And because of that situation, like when it comes to skills and techniques you can do with a firearm, this part up here is probably not very clear. You know what I mean? So again, it's like, well, what do I want to do with a gun? What do I need to do? And it's like, hey man, just any of it is super valuable. So don't get too wrapped around the axle about like, oh man, I went to this guy's class who's a professional sports shooter. I learned all these friggin' techniques that apply directly to that, like most optimally, totally cool. And then I went to this other friggin', super friggin' SEAL Delta Ranger operator course. And he said that magazine change technique that I learned was fucking dumb because it would get me killed. And it's like, okay, everybody just relax. Okay. It's just like that technique was probably super valid for whatever the hell, was going on there. As is this one. All right. So you as the individual person, as long as you just understand, it's like, all right, man, I got about 5 fucking techniques in my back pocket for friggin' loading a handgun. You know what I mean? Mag change in a handgun. That's just a skill. I got about 5 techniques for it. Some of them work great here, some of them here, whatever, it's all a value add. So don't overthink it. You know what I mean? And I don't prescribe at all to oh, that shit will get you killed. The sports shooting stuff will get you killed, or this tactical stuff is not going to let you win a sport match. It's like, no, dude, they have a lot of similarities and a few key differences. And boy, fuck, we spend a lot of time on those few. And I say few, it's like 3. You know what I mean? Maybe tops.
Well, I mean, they are, but they're simple things. Like there's not a 180-degree rule in real life. But you know what there is? There's hot walls. There's hot walls, dude. You have to be able to maneuver without pointing your gun at your buddy's face.
Yeah. Yep. But you don't necessarily learn in that specific discipline, so we can teach you techniques, in this other discipline of application stuff. And I guess we're already over 2 hours. I'll just kind of try to put a bow in this. That is the shooting of a firearm, just the mechanical, technical skills of shooting the gun, whatever. They're all great. The gap that I like to explore with what I do specifically is the application of firearms. Like how are we going to apply this to a thing? And typically when we apply it to something in a, the variables that are present on the flat range are not the same variables, in a CQB house. So issues start rising to the surface. And one of those big issues is just like employment. It's like, yeah, dude, it's just once you filter out all the bullshit, this rifle I have, like all it does is launch bullets and launch light. That's it. Like how many problems in this, doing this CQB run required bullets and light? And they're like, we're only like 2. I'm like, yep, the rest of them was not that. But when you did have to use it, you had to apply it. You had to employ it in context with all this other stuff going on, all these variables you couldn't account for. How'd that go? And like, well, I'm not getting the same results in the house, speed, marksmanship wise that I get on the flat range. And it's like, okay, that's what we're going to explore. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to fill that friggin' void. And you can apply that to anything. Cause I do a block of instruction with I've done it with civilians, but with law enforcement guys, and it's, you may have to shoot the gun, depending on what you see and how it goes. And oh, by the way, and then when you do shoot the gun, your marksmanship is going to be very tightly graded. And they're like, wow, I really thought I could shoot this thing. And now I feel like I can't shoot it at all. And it's like, well, what changed? Well, what changed is we just put back into play all the variables that are not on a flat range or not in a, a sport stage or whatever the case is. So once we put those variables back in play, can you employ that freaking tool as necessary? That's what I really enjoy working, is that problem set.
Awesome. Well, then where's the best way for people to find you? Because you're training, you're offering a couple of pieces, but what's your
company's called Joint Training Facility. I just started it. I used to work for Blue Force Gear. Thankfully, they're still a client of mine, so I still get to support them and their team and their product because it's amazing. But I started a thing called Joint Training Facility. I don't have a website. I don't have anything yet, so don't look for me. My Instagram is I think it shows you how much I use it. It's Sizelove _Chris _ type 1 each, I think, something like that. Yeah, don't look. You can just search Sizelove. I think I'm like one of the only couple on Instagram, but don't look at my page. I don't think I've put anything on there in like a year and a half, but I just use it to communicate with people and keep tabs.
No.
Shit like that. But yeah, man, I'm hoping in 2025 to be a little bit more active, overtly active, so to speak, in the industry and with education and training and classes and things like that.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, I'm intrigued.
We'll put a plug in, actually, if I may.
Please do.
I'll be teaching a class called Feed It, Fix It, Fight With It. It's a carbine skills and techniques class at Low Country Range Days happening here in Riceboro, Georgia. Fantastic. Nice. Yeah, it's one of those like round robin, a bunch of badass instructors. Some really, really top end guys are doing, 4-hour blocks of little things. It's kind of one of those big, it's a community event. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah, those are growing more and more and more. Perhaps we're going to have to get you out here.
They're great, man. I enjoy doing those things because, peers get together and then of course all the students and, guys meet people. This industry is fantastic because here's another topic, if you want to edit out some bullshit we talked about earlier that was boring. I stand in front of, when I do get a chance to stand in front of like normal earth people, and I'm like, hey, here's my take on this problem set. You guys put time, effort, energy, money, dedication to like be in this community. Because if you're an adult man in America, like you got to have a thing. You know what I mean? Your job, your family, and then whatever your thing is. You're fucking ride Harleys, or you're a fisherman, or whatever, something like whatever your thing is. And if you want to, buy nods and rifles and lasers and load carriage equipment and go to these classes and do these things, like don't let anybody ever motherfuck you about doing that. You know what I mean? The whole like tactical band camp shit, I can't stand it. Because like, hey, the worst case scenario, if you become a part of this community, worst case scenario, you're going to pick up some skills and techniques that you could use to like defend yourself, your family, your country. And you're going to meet some amazing people. You know what I mean? Like just, there's incredible people in this community. So that's the worst case scenario. And if you didn't have, $50,000 in guns and gear, you'd have a fucking Harley. It's the same thing. It's like, just pick your thing, pick your subculture. And then this is like a really good subculture to be a part of, just because of the benefits it provides. But I do like those like round robin type events because a lot of people get to meet each other and they get to hear things from a lot of different instructors, kind of in a condensed timeline. So then they can go out later and pick, like, I actually want to go to that guy's like 3-day class or whatever. I got 4 hours of his thoughts on this certain topic. But yeah, anyway, Low Country Range Days, just Google it. If you're in the Southeast, definitely come.
Awesome. Well, I'll close off on that part on community. I think that's I wish I heard more. I wish I heard that more often. I think there's quite a bit going on in our gun culture and and in our America right now that is very much so, it doesn't matter what you're into, someone's going to hate you for it. But but it's like the gun culture certainly does have its detractors. It's got its people that make things uncomfortable. It's clout chasers. It's fighting. It's whatever.
Like, so do bass fishermen. It's the same.
So the reality is, just, I don't know, grow up past it, I guess. Don't surround yourself with the same people that you don't enjoy. So it sounds like a really bad way to give advice. Oh, you don't like people? Don't be around them. Okay, you need to get out of your house. Get out of your house. So, like, he's hermited too much. Help me, Lord. Alrighty. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this conversation in regards to how technical we were able to get in talking about not just mindset or buzzwords, but training, its techniques, and how I appreciate your taxonomy. I hope if you do decide to burgeon further into public-facing social media, I hope that you're able to expand on that. Last on that one is, I think this is one of those times where I've had a conversation with someone which I really enjoyed in sort of an academic sense. Like, we were defining our terms, and I appreciate the insight that you've brought onto that. And so as from one man to another, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing how you look at training from not only the building blocks to a whole product, but also lethality. And we went through your taxonomy. We covered a couple of subjects with how we look at targeting and building a goal and leadership structures. So if you could, I'd like to have another conversation with you sometime in the future, maybe a couple months down the road. And sure. Cool.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time, and for everybody that like managed to sit through 2 hours and 12 minutes of like me vomiting up a bunch of like unstructured shit. I apologize. Next time I'll be prepared with more graphics or something to show, put in my hands. More exciting stuff. I guess we'll talk about
No, this is really good.
I think for H59 or Trimmer 3 or some shit. I don't know. But
as long as I'll have to work on my graphical capabilities, and maybe we'll just make a way out. It's been some time. My wife and I haven't visited Savannah. It's together. It's on our wish list. So maybe one of these days I'll be in your backyard.
Absolutely, brother. Welcome anytime. Thanks for what you're doing out there. I love your show. I've watched a bunch of episodes. Fucking keep on keeping on, brother.
If I wouldn't be able to do it if I hadn't met people like you, even though that was 10 years ago in the hallways of Ranger Battalion, and I was like, oh, that's the guy. Yeah. One of these days, if I can figure out how to tell the story better, I will. But I'm very honored to be here, and it brings a sense of encouragement that let's see, it's 2024. It would have been 14 years ago, 15 years ago. I remember I saw it's as much as this sounds like a romance movie. I'm honored that 15 years ago I was able to look up to you, and now I still can do that. But also, you're able to share more with the community. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we're like mutually supportive. You know what I mean? It's great, and it is it's a small world out there.
Very.
Because it's supposed to be. You know what I mean?
It is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is. Yep. Well, all right, Chris, it's been great. We'll talk to you later. For those who are still listening to the show, you know how we're going to close it out. You can check out our merch. You can go to our store at redactedllc.com, or if you would just want to support the show directly, you can go over to redactedculture.locals.com. I'm here. You can reach out to me on Instagram. I try to get back to people rather quickly, but I'm starting to get busy, so knock it out. And if you're interested in coming to some of our public land cleanups, you can always find that at our website. So, Chris, it's been a pleasure. For everybody else, now go forth and conquer.
Thanks a lot, brother.